Hello, good afternoon to everybody who's joined us. Welcome to the UK Deaf Leadership Summit. My name is Stuart and I'm your host for today. This is our first event of 2023, and this week is also, we're part of International Leadership Week. And this has been organised by the Institute for Leadership and Management. We're delighted to have you all with us today. Especially we're grateful that somebody from the Cayman Islands is viewing this session. So a warm welcome to you. We're delighted to welcome staff and members from ILM and to a broad range of representative organisations from around the world. Today we have a mixed audience of deaf and hearing people. And some of you are chief executive officers, operational managers, team leaders, and some of you are just starting your leadership careers. So today we're interviewing, and hopefully will inspire you to become leaders wherever you are working and whatever it is you're doing. I hope today gives you some food for thought and time to think about how you make the workplace and wider society more accessible for everybody. And thinking particularly for deaf and hard of hearing people, this event is accessed through sign language and also English. There are captions available if people want to follow them. Our speaker today will be presenting for about 15 minutes, and then it will be over to you to ask questions. So please type your questions in the chat function, the Q&A box, and hopefully we'll have time to get through to all the questions you ask. So our special guest speaker today is a world-renowned expert on leadership theory and leadership development. He has high academic placements in the UN and other organisations. He's an author of over 40 books on leadership and management, as well as other subjects. My company, Deaf and Hearing Trailblazers, we are a licensed provider of the leadership and training program that our speaker and his colleagues have designed. And over 1 million leaders have been on these courses from right around the world. So you can imagine we are so pleased to welcome today our speaker. Really grateful that he's found the time to come and meet with us today. So it is my great pleasure to welcome John Adair. So John, welcome to UK Deaf Leadership Summit.
Thank you very much indeed. May I say what a real pleasure it is to be with you. Something I really look forward to. It's also a joy to be able to support the work that Stuart is doing with your community and his team. And I'd also, by the way, like to thank Catherine and Sarah for being part of my team today to get across and share with you some thoughts on leadership. This isn't going to be a lecture. Think of it more as a conversation with you personally, and each of you will take something different away from today. So the theme really is going to be leadership. And I want to share with you what is the world's body of knowledge or practical wisdom about leadership. It's a difficult, complicated subject, but you know already a great deal about it. So I'm not really going to try and tell you anything new. I want to put what you know already about leadership into better order so that you can make more use of it. It helps with a big subject like this to find out the fundamental key question that we all have to think about. And you remember that Einstein was famous for saying that when he was a boy, he asked himself what it would be like to ride on the back of a sunbeam. And he said that other boys grew up and forgot about that. He lived with that question all his life and came up with the theory eventually, which of course has transformed physics, about the how the world would look if we were traveling at the speed of light. Now, I was lucky because quite early on, even when I was at school, I stumbled upon the key question in leadership. And that is, why is it that one person is seen to be a leader rather than anybody else? What is it about a person that others perceive that person to be a natural leader in a group? That's the key question. And there are three ways of answering that question down the history of the world. And I'm going to cut to the chase and say that you have to draw on all three of them if you're going to be an effective leader. The first view was that a leader is perceived to have certain qualities or characteristics that make him or her a leader, such as determination, resilience, courage, and so on. And initially, the drawback of this particular approach, called the qualities approach, was that when people looked at it, psychologists looked at it in modern times, they seem to find lots of differences between the various approaches. There are about 17,000 words in the English language about qualities and characteristics. Therefore, there's a lot of choice. But despite all this difference between all the lists, there does emerge from the world's study of leadership certain qualities which do tend to go with the leader. Top of the list, I would put enthusiasm. The gift of being able to inspire people is partly linked to the enthusiasm that you have. Van Gogh, the famous artist, once said that what colors are to pictures, enthusiasm is to life. So the first key requirement is enthusiasm. And if you know people and work with, whether they're teachers or leaders who lack enthusiasm for what they're doing, notice a difference. Then comes the quality of integrity, which is vital because it's the quality which makes people trust you. What is integrity? Well, it comes from the Latin word integer, whole. It means a completeness, but it also means adherence to values outside yourself, especially truth. Why is it important? Because, as I say, or as the Roman historian Livy once said, trust being lost, all human intercourse comes to nothing. So trust is key. I have spoken on this subject or shared thoughts with people on this subject over quite a long period of time. And I promise you that not once have I ever spoken on this subject without mentioning integrity. Then comes the combination of toughness or demandingness and fairness. Leadership's not about being popular. It's about being respected, but not being popular. It's not being liked. You have to divorce yourself from that requirement. But it also has to be balanced by fairness or justice. You can be quite demanding as a leader. Confucius, the Chinese great thinker on leadership 2,000 years, 4,000 years ago, once said that leaders are easy to serve but difficult to please. So if you have high standards, you will sometimes find that people don't regard you with great favor, that you're demanding the best from them. And then comes humanity, warmth, kindness. Leaders, cold fish don't make good leaders. You've got to have a warmth in your heart to be a leader. You've got to really like people. And last but not least, in my very short list, is humility, the lack of arrogance, being willing to listen, being willing to learn, being willing to accept sometimes that you're the one that made the mistake, not the team, so on. Now that's just an indicative list, but the Zulus do have a saying which I always enjoy, and it's this, that I cannot hear what you're saying because what you are is shouting at me. And you have to remember always that these qualities that I've mentioned don't do anything. They don't perform anything. But if you don't have them, everything you do will collapse. The second approach took a different line. It said no such thing as a born leader. It all depends on the situation. Put a person in one situation, there'll be a leader. Put them in another situation and they won't. Winston Churchill, great leader in wartime, not so good in peace. And the key to this was, of course, knowledge. And there are three kinds of knowledge, of authority in human affairs. There's the authority of knowledge. Why do you do what the doctor tells you to do? Because the doctor, on the whole, tends to know. And he's seen many more cases than yours. There's the authority of position or situation. I'm the boss, I'm the commanding officer, I'm the head teacher, do it. And then there's the authority of personality, which in its extremely rare form is charisma. Now, all three forms of authority are important. And the way to build your confidence, which is key to leadership, is building your knowledge. So that in a group, you are seen to be somebody who knows the business, what they're talking about. And that wins you confidence. But the drawback of the second approach is there are people who are very knowledgeable and experienced and have all the degrees, but somehow people don't think they're leaders. So that leads us on to the third approach, where we made the Einsteinian breakthrough. And that was something not actually to do directly with leadership. It was about groups. It was about the needs present in working groups. Every working group has a group personality, like you and I, so that what works in one group won't work in another. But present in the all working groups are these three overlapping areas of need. The three-circle diagram: task, team, and individual. And the circles overlap so that the need to achieve the task is one circle, but it affects the other two. So that if you fail to achieve the task, the team will tend to fall apart and the individuals will suffer too, because it's not much fun being in an organization which is failing. And you can work the three circles round, and when you do a leadership program, the trainer will take you through that so that you can see how interactive the three areas are. I could actually explain this in sign language, because if you look at the sign for a leader pulling the group, notice that there are 10 digits in my hands. And this is quite a key figure in leadership, because the Greek army and the Roman army all organized the basic group as being 10. And the leader of the 10 was known as in the Roman army as the decanus. And that from that word, we get the word dean. So the dean of a cathedral or the dean of a university is the leader of 10 people. So those are your digits. But remember, every individual is different. That thumb is much shorter than that chap there. So you've got individuals, the team, and movement towards the task, which gives you the sign. So you're lucky. The sign language is rich in thought for you about the nature of leadership. So the three circles overlap, and in order to achieve the three circles, the task, the team, and the individual, certain key functions have to be performed. And a function is what you do as opposed to a quality, which is what you are. And once we've made that discovery, we could start to train people, because the functions like defining the task, briefing the group, planning, setting group standards, evaluating performance, all these you can actually practice. So we incorporate that opportunities to practice alongside with the theory, and that produced probably, as I said myself, the most effective form of leadership development, which we've so far discovered. And it's worth also mentioning that it's not only appropriate in the work situation when people are starting off in their careers, but we are now beginning to experiment with doing it with school children, because the earlier you start learning, the better. So I would hope that many deaf schools may take up this challenge of doing this with young people at school, and I hope we'll be able to help them. So coming down to the summary of it, It's leadership's about what you are, what you know, and what you can do as a leader. You can be appointed to be a manager, you can be appointed to be a commanding officer, you can be appointed to be a head teacher, you can be appointed to head up any organization. In other words, you can be given or elected to or appointed to the role of a leader, but you're not actually a leader till your appointment is ratified in the hearts and minds of those who are going to be in your group. So that's the challenge. Now, I want to lastly suggest, just briefly, that leadership exists on different levels. I've talked about the team level with 10, 12 people. There's also level of the operational leader who's leading or part of the organization with more than one team reporting to them. And then there's the strategic leadership, which involves leading a whole organization, the NHS, Unilever, whatever. Now, the three circles applies at all three levels. It's simple, not superficial, but not simplistic. It has depth and it has applicability at all three levels, but the functions change and to some extent the qualities change. And we have mapped out those changes and now can offer leadership development based on the three circles at all three levels. And when you look today, and I'm talking now, if you forgive me, with a British context, if you look at the terrible stories that are coming out about poor leadership in the Metropolitan Police, in the to some extent in the NHS, you realize that they have not grasped that you need excellence at all three levels if you're going to be create the leadership the world needs today. And so the challenge there is to think about leadership as a whole and see that you start with planting those seeds at school level among young people. The seeds of the future lie in the present. And then you build on those as time goes by. Now, I've talked quite a lot, and I hope one or two things have stirred up either your anger or your interest. I don't mind which. Please be as critical as you like. Please share with me things that you feel I've left out. Please ask me for any clarification, and I will do my best. Over to you, Sarah.
Wonderful. John, thank you for that introduction to your philosophy, the philosophy of leadership, and how we start to identify for potential leaders from their qualities, from how they behave as individuals, and how they are in recognizable positions. And I agree with you that the earlier we learn these principles, then it becomes easier as we go through life to accept responsibility. I mean, I remember when I first was introduced to your theory, that was probably 35 years ago. And I was with a group of friends on a course at the Career Society, and I was engaging with a group together, and it was Bob Kent, and now that group of people, you know, I've kept in touch with over those years. And we talk about your theory and how it's impacted on our work and how we implement it on our work. I mean, some of those people are part of a forward-thinking movement in the UK, which the government has just established the Sign Language Advisory Group. And one of those young people on that course is now the chair of that group. And one other member of the cohort was actually on that course too. So you can imagine it's a great honour to have you with us today and to hear you share your thoughts. So if we go to the first question. So the first question is, people often think of leadership and management, and it's something that happens in the workplace. But what about the community? Do you think your 3 circles also applies to voluntary and community work?
Yes. If I can separate those for a moment, the voluntary field is critical in terms of its need for leaders, because volunteers can walk away. They're free and equal. And you could argue that really everybody is a volunteer, because we're in today's world, because we can all walk away. And so the leadership of free and equal people is critical. And if you look at the 3 purpose circles, in the task area, what is key is that there should be a strong sense of purpose, because people only give their best if they believe in the purpose of the organization. And then teamwork is equally important in the voluntary sector as in the commercial one. And of course, each individual counts and is rewarded by feeling they're contributing to something larger than themselves and which is worthwhile. And one of the most interesting programs that we're involved in, Kate and I, is with the Ukrainian voluntary services at the moment. This year, hopefully, the plan is for more than 300 voluntary organizations working in the Ukraine will be going through action-centered leadership programs. And this is part of our great commitment to that sector. Thinking in terms of the wider circle, wider area of community, which includes local community, regional community, and national community politics. Yes, these 3 circles is equally important. The purposes tend to be more general, wider, but the value of people working together in teams and so on, and is critical. And I talked about the 10 people in the work group and so on, but in the equivalent element in is the family in the community, where the relationships are one of being or ontological, they're not functional, but there is an overlap between good families and good work groups.
Thank you for that, John. I hope people now see how much it can support volunteers and help them to understand their role, and remember why they got involved in volunteering in the first place, and hopefully see that they are contributing to the purpose of the organisation.
Yes, and also that they're not receiving money for their work very often, and it's important for the leader to ensure that they get that sense of well-being from contributing and giving and sharing that they want. We're all, remember, at base, we're all individual embodied persons. We're individual, which means we're unique. There's only one of you in the world today. There's only one of you you're the only person that's ever existed. You're unique in that way, and you've got a unique set of skills, challenges, abilities, qualities that make you you. We're embodied, by which means we're male or female, and we share that with roughly half the world's population. But when it comes to persons, we're all alike. We are common, and we share the common need to love and be loved. And you, as a voluntary organisation, are giving people opportunities to love, and that's what the world needs. I'm only falling silent because I don't want to start giving lectures. The temptation is great.
Perhaps we need another session, maybe. So, John, when you go back to talking about the 3 circles model, I mean, some of us started learning that 35 years ago, and we're still learning to use it, to apply it, to make sure we're using our qualities to the best of their abilities. So what would you say from your experience, which part of the model do you feel that people find the most difficult and the most challenging to live up to?
Well, I can't pretend that there is a research to answer that question. So I'm going to take a punt and guess what is the most difficult bit. And that is to be able to bear in mind and apply all the 3 circles at the same time. Let me explain. For a lot of people, it is the task circle that is dominant. And many, many people, if you open their heart, they only have the task circle written on it. That's all they're interested in. They don't have any much sense of the team or the individual. And it's quite difficult, and ACL starts you on this journey of being able to think, not just afterwards looking back, but during the work, that you're conscious of the task and the team and the individual. And the great leaders find that odd little moment just to put an arm around somebody, just to say an encouraging word to an individual, just to notice that an individual's not feeling well, all that kind of thing. And they're also very aware of the team, of the group, and the forces that are acting in it for good or ill. And they may need to correct that. So they're doing 3 things at once. Now, if you think of when you learned to drive a car, how difficult it is. You needed 12, 20 lessons to learn that you've got the steering wheel, you've got the pedals, and you've got the gear lever. And you've got to do it all once. I failed totally to learn the piano because I can pick out a tune with one finger, but I can't play two hands and the pedals. You see what I mean? So although ACL is sounding very simple, it's actually very complex. It's not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. And you need to practice. And if you do that over a period of time, it becomes part of you. You know, a great pianist sits down and just plays, and you think, oh, I could never do that. But they've had 10,000 hours of practice. So we need to encourage people to say, this is a journey, you know. You mentioned 35 years ago. I recently heard Lord Dannett, the former chief of the Defence Staff, speak. And he said, for me, he was talking on leadership, I've actually heard him twice. He said, leadership for me began in 1968 when I was taught three circles at Sandhurst. And so you've got a lifetime of building on that foundation. And the best leaders are continuing to reflect and talk about the model, as Stuart mentioned a bit earlier, so that it's continually being refreshed, continually being developed, and becoming part of you.
If I take a question from the audience just quickly, they were asking about the task circle. And they're asking, is that relevant to organisations' mission and purpose and aims and objectives? Is that what task means?
Task is a good question. Task is a very general word in the English language. It means something that needs to be done. It's got a sense of obligation, of necessity about it. When I say it's related to the word tax, you understand what I mean. You've got to pay your taxes. But it's important to, again, as you go on and develop it, think about the task quite carefully, because you can break it down into objectives, targets, tangible things that need to be done quite soon, aims, which are longer term and open-ended but directional, like we aim to improve provision for sign language in schools and so on, that kind of open-ended aim. And then purpose, which answers the question why. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this way? Why are we doing it at all? Why is it worthwhile? So you've got a kind of Jacob's ladder where you can go up, objective to aim to purpose, or you can come down from purpose, say, okay, that's our purpose. How are we going to do it? And that breaks down into aims. How are we going to achieve this aim? That breaks down into objectives. And then how are we going to achieve this objective? And that breaks down into steps that you will take today. So a leader is always thinking in terms of that, breaking it down and making it happen to a group. But purpose, a sense of purpose, is becoming more and more important. And the nature of that purpose is goodness. So we're looking for leaders in every field, not just the deaf community, who are good leaders in terms of effectiveness and leaders for good. That's the challenge of the world today.
Thank you for answering that one. And I hope the audience are satisfied with the answer. The next question was something you mentioned earlier about learning leadership when you're younger.
Right.
And the audience saying, well, kind of young people today, we use the term millennials. And you don't see millennials being attracted to responsibility. Do you think that has the potential? Do you think they have the potential to become leaders if they don't want to take responsibility?
Well, first, let me say that I would never generalize about people or put them into categories like millennials. We're all different. But it is crucial, you're quite right, to say that responsibility or willingness to take responsibility is a necessary condition for leaders. But life is such that everybody eventually takes responsibility. If you get married, you take responsibility for your children. In the context of leadership, the three circles, there is an important distinction between responsibility and accountability. The basic idea, you're a leader, is you need everybody in the team, all those 10 people, to feel as much responsibility as you do for achieving the task, for working as a high-performance team, and for each individual and their needs. What the difference is that the appointed or elected leader is accountable, which is a quasi-legal term. That means they're the ones that get the sack or get lose their jobs if they fail to achieve the task, and they fail to build a team, and they fail to protect individuals or develop. And it's very important that the leader realizes that why they get paid more is because they are accountable.
Okay, it's an interesting answer actually, and it does lead on to my next question. We hear from other people who talk about leadership, who are aspiring to become leaders. So what from your long career, what has made you more interested to consult on a project on leadership or training or development, and what that you've been involved with?
I'm not, to be honest, not quite clear what that question is. Can you have another go? Yeah.
Apologies. So which project has been the most interesting for you to be part of or to consult on?
This one. The height of my interest is now, today, and this is the most interesting project I've ever been involved in. And I say that my Ukrainian project too, which is running at the moment too. Every project has been immensely interesting. I've been very lucky at the enormous variety. range of them. But I'm full of interest for this one. This is so important. There are 450 million people throughout the world who are hard of hearing or deaf. And we need their talents. We need their contribution. We need their warmth and so on. The world needs it. So this is critical. I also hope you'll buy some of my books as well, but I ought to mention. By the way, are those books, some of those books in Braille or not? I'm looking at Stuart for an answer to this.
Well, if we go on to talk about your books, John, someone in the audience has posted a comment that says, I've bought a book on leadership, but you've written 40 books and I haven't got enough space at home for 40 books. So which one would you recommend I should read? And that is a question from the audience today.
Well, I can give you a very simple answer. The classic book is Effective Leadership, which is a pan paperback book. It's the best book I've ever written on leadership. But a close second, also now easily available, and is Develop Your Leadership Skills, which is a Kogan page book. Yeah, Stuart's holding it up. That's the series, the PAN series of paperbacks. One soon discovers as an author through feedback and all sorts of other things, which are the books that work best. And I've no doubt that Effective Leadership is one, and it's relatively inexpensive and equally useful, probably, as Develop Your Leadership Skills, Kogan page. So it's interesting for the blind community that they should be in Braille. The deaf community, they're easily available.
Okay, I think we've got about just 10 minutes left, so hopefully we'll have time for 2 more questions. Yes, so the world is changing, and from those, we're now in the information age. Everything is digital. We're doing everything on computers. So what qualities do you think people need to develop in the future?
I think you mentioned the information age, which makes me also think at once we're also in the fake information age. There's a massive amount of misinformation around. And I think one of the real challenges of leaders is the truth, to be able to discern clearly, to be clear thinking about what they're doing, what their role is, why they're being paid, if they are being paid, and how they can achieve what they're there to do. So I think the importance of clear thinking is critical. I think, too, we have to work out ways in which we can build into action-centered leadership key values: truth, goodness, beauty. We're in a world which is sadly experiencing bullying at work, sexual harassment, racial discrimination, and a lot of unpleasant nasty things. And a lot of the values in action-centered leadership have been implicit. They're not being spelled out. We have to find ways which we can convey to people that it's not only good leadership, but leadership for good. The Greeks had two different words, kalos, which means good or effective or beautiful, and agathos, which means good in the moral sense. And you've got to have both in a leader. King Alfred the Great once said that leadership's a good man skilled in leadership. And that's a pretty key thing. And how we can convey that and how we can sow seeds that the next generation is better than this one at it is what we're in business to do. And we can do it. We have the know-how to do it. And we have a growing number of people who realize the importance of this and are resolved to make it happen. But it's worldwide. And the great merit of the three circles approach is that it's universal, it's generic, it is timeless. Truth doesn't rust. It's not a fashion business. Leadership's a fashion business. A lot of fads around in leadership, but the truth is the key to building leaders. And we're fortunate that we've made advances in that area, and we have the capability of doing it. Have I time for one more question?
Yeah, we do. One more. Okay. So this one was sent in by the audience in advance, possibly 2 weeks ago now. And it's an interesting question. So your involvement in leadership development and training at a global level with the UN and other large international organizations. What have you learned from leaders at a global level? And what advice can you give to leaders of the deaf community about working together for equality in sign language and access to education?
A very good question to end on. I'm going to just answer this and then I'll say a few words by way of conclusion. I think the thing I've learned most from all these different leaders in these different fields is that there is nobody who cannot improve their leadership at all. That there is nobody who has everything cut and dried and under their belt. We're not like that. We're incomplete. The Songa tribe in Africa say nobody is born as a leader. You learn it, you acquire it. And the critical difference between the leaders I've come across at any level, team level, operational level, strategic level, or even political level with the United Nations, is there is nobody who cannot improve their leadership. There's no finished journey. This is an endless journey. And I'm learning every day new things about leadership. I've been thinking about it probably quite a long time. So it's a pilgrimage. It's a journey. It's a second vocation. You go on learning all the time. And the ones that fail are those who stop learning and become ossified at a certain level. So keeping that openness is critical. And ACL is a very good foundation, but it's not the end of the story. You need to build on it. And if I can say something, particularly for the deaf community, because things like blindness or deafness can be, if you allow them, cut off, isolationist things. So not only can you grow and develop as leaders in the deaf community, thankfully, with all these great new opportunities, but you need to build in opportunities of cross-fertilization with leaders in other fields. So, because if leadership is generic, it becomes richer, more metaphors you have for it. You think of the conductor of an orchestra, of a jazz band, everybody's got things that you can learn from and build in to your concept of leadership. The Chinese have a proverb which says, pluck feathers from every passing goose, but don't rely on any one. So you're always plucking feathers, people like me and others. You're adding it. You're writing your own book about leadership, and that's the story of your life. That's what you're up to. So I'm delighted that you have this vision of the deaf community providing and adding to the leadership of the world and sharing it with other people and giving as well as receiving from it. If I can just very finally say a very few words, because it's been lovely to talk to you. And my thanks again to Catherine and Sarah for great sign languages communication, and to Stuart for presiding over it with that lovely smile. Can I thank you all for that? I just want to very quickly share with you, in parting, I think the greatest thing ever said about leadership, at least as far as I've come across. And it occurred in a talk given at the University of St. Andrews in 1930. The University of St. Andrews was the first university in the world to have lectures on leadership for its students. There was a local family, Walker family, who set up a trust to pay for eminent leaders to go up to St. Andrews and talk to the students on leadership. And in the next 18, 19 years, very famous people went up, Field Marshal Montgomery and people like that, who was very impressed by the students and their response. But arguably the greatest speaker on this series was John Buchan, the novelist, who was also Governor General of Canada. And in the course of his lecture, which was about a famous Scottish general in the Civil War, he said this. He said, the task of leadership is not to put greatness into people. It is to elicit it, to draw it out, because the greatness is there already. So for all of you, who aspire to be leadership, and that's great work, aspire to be leaders, because it's aspiring to be something which is very good. That key vision of seeing the greatness in people and wanting to draw it out and put it to good use, that's the key. And it brings you back to that fundamental vision for your life. which I hope will inspire you as much as it's inspired me, to be, as far as one can, with all one's limitations, but with all that desire to learn and to grow, to be a good leader, to lead a good. And my thoughts and prayers go with you on that journey. So thank you so much for listening. It's been a great pleasure.
John, thank you for your summing up. You saved me the time in summing up now. Actually, we've had comments from the audience just saying, thank you for your inspiring, great leadership. And I do want to say something as well, and it's great to have this opportunity to sit down with you and have a conversation and just to share your real world thoughts on how we apply the theories. So John, thank you so much again for your time and your support. And if I just finish off by thanking the audience, and if they're interested in learning more, and I hope you all are, we'll be sending out in the next week or 2 weeks some information, and hopefully we can welcome you back to some training. So just as we're finishing off now, I will play a short video so we all know what the next programme will be in this series of UK Deaf Leadership Summit sessions. So thank you again, John, and good luck with your project in Ukraine. It sounds fantastic.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.